This is Sales Untraining, a very different kind of sales podcast. 3 out of 4 salespeople are failing. They're falling short of their revenue. Why doesn't sales training work? That's what this sales podcast is about. It's your weekly sales strategy guide designed to rewire your sales brain. Welcome to Sales Untraining. It is your weekly sales strategy guide designed to completely rewire your sales brain, because there's just so many things that we're not doing well when it comes to training salespeople, and so much to learn. And let me tell you how I know that. Had a nice conversation a couple of weeks with my good friend Jeff Bajorek, who's joining me today with ChatGPT. Yes, we interviewed Chat, and Chat's gathering all this information from all over the internet. I know it's out there. I know we can be doing it differently, but we're not. So welcome to the show. Great to have you. Hope you'll take a moment, like and subscribe to the podcast. Get a chance, share it with somebody who needs to be a part of this conversation. We're going to have Chat on in just a few moments. Chat, you're listening in. Take a break and wait for us. We'll be with you in a little bit. But first, Jeff, I want to talk about what our takeaways were from last time, because I went back and watched the episode now twice. Never done that before, and I was absolutely blown away. So after a couple of weeks to simmer on this deal, what do you take away?
My biggest takeaway, Kelly, and thanks again for having me back. Hard to think of a better way to start a Monday morning than with this show. And I love the work that you're doing. And hat tip to your producer, Doug Branson, for figuring out how to make all this stuff work together, because it's not as simple as just, giving the chatbot a microphone.
We had no chance.
No.
We had no chance.
The thing that I've been thinking about, one, it was really fun to listen back to that episode. I don't always listen back to the podcast that I'm on because, I was there the first time. It was magic. It was great. That was fun. But I listened back to it and I've shared it with some people because I just can't get over how cool it was. But what has stuck with me is how underutilized this technology is. And it's been a couple of months ago. And actually it was a couple of months ago when I was on this show, we had talked about the idea about how, most of the prompts that ChatGPT is asked, particularly from salespeople, are about, okay, what are my best closing questions? What are the discovery questions I should be asking? Basically glorified web searches. I'm doing so many more things with this bot because of the expertise that it has. Well, I don't even know if it's expertise. I think it's knowledge, but with the power that's here that people are not utilizing because they don't know that they can, because they don't know how, or I think there's a large number of people, a lot of our colleagues out there, certainly a lot of our clients out there, who are just afraid to get into it because it is a big deal. This is a technology that is making changes to our society akin to electricity. And I think about that. This is tidal wave kind of stuff. There are a lot of reasons that people are staying away from it, but I think the more I dig into it, the more I see reasons to dig into it. And my family laughs at how often I ask them, did you check with AI on this?
Right.
But
That's
I mean, it's just, it is, they're annoyed. And I don't even blame them because it is kind of like a broken record. And they do get a little frustrated with me sometimes because Dad, come on, will you just be my dad? Right. But it's one of those things where I really want to make indelible the idea that they have more resources in or with more context than they ever have in the past.
Right.
And I think particularly my teenagers, they're going to have to leverage this technology.
Okay. Well,
in one way or another.
So your kids are not older yet. They're not married. They don't have grandkids. Or your grandkids.
Yeah.
My kids are gone. I'm empty nester. I have grandkids. Get ready because this is going to annoy you to death. But, with the advent of the internet and Google search and all that jazz, what we learned is that many times our kids and those that we see around them, they don't come and ask mom and dad like they did back in the old days. My wife would ask her mom or my mom, or I'd ask my dad or her dad, that kind of thing about life, about issues. Oh, no. Nowadays, they Google it, and they give more credence to Google than they do their own parents. So this script is going to get flipped on you, my friend. Down the road, they're going to say, well, I checked with Chad or Claude or, whomever, and you're wrong.
But I like that because here's the thing, and this is the theme that I hope we can get across to people listening to this show. It's not just about what ChatGPT can do for you, what you can offload to it. It's once you offload to AI, Claude, I'm a big fan of Claude recently too, is once you offload some of those tasks to the AI, what can you now do as a result of not using all of that bandwidth on the stuff that wears you out? Right? How do you reduce toil? How do you reduce mental bandwidth, overload, right? I mean, it's not just about math and computations. It's, hey, help me think through this. And now that you've done all that work, all that research, or all that computation, or all that summarization, or whatever, okay, now help me do something with this. And so the ceiling gets higher. And that's, look, I will tell you this, Kelly, and I fully appreciate where you're coming from with that comment, but when my kids come to me and say, I've been doing a lot of work on this, Dad, and I need some help interpreting what I'm dealing with and the answers that I'm getting, that is a much higher order level conversation.
Yes, absolutely.
Than, you know what I mean? And so I think that's the point, right? And, we've talked about this, the price of knowledge is going through the floor. The value of expertise is going through the roof.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Well, before we start losing people, because we're not talking about anything
it's not a parenting podcast.
Sales leaders, stick around. This is going to be a great episode, and not our final episode. The deeper we get in it, the deeper we see opportunities that exist. But we're going to have some really critical questions for chat. I want to start up because we're going to look at those use cases you're sort of discussing, and we're going to open up some new opportunities as well today. So I want to start by bringing chat into the conversation. And chat, I want to ask you, when we were together last time, you came up with some phenomenal answers. We dug in, we got some more depth, we got into tactical details, but something occurred to me. You're scrubbing the internet for all of this information. I know that this information is out there. How to be more effective as a salesperson, how to transform a sales organization, how to close more deals as a salesperson, et cetera, et cetera. And yet the data is overwhelming. The vast majority of salespeople and companies are not following the readily available advice that is out there for salespeople. My question to you, Chad, is can you speculate on why that might be the case?
That's a great question, Kelly. Even though the information is out there, the challenge often lies in execution. Many companies struggle with change management, aligning their teams, and consistently applying best practices. It's one thing to know what to do, and another to actually do it consistently across a whole organization. Plus, there's often a gap between knowledge and practice, which is where tools like me can help bridge that divide.
Well, go deeper into that. How would you help bridge that divide? Again, it's not just the information, but it's the execution of that. How can you help in that regard?
One reason is that having information is only part of the equation. Implementing it effectively requires a shift in mindset, culture, and processes, which can be challenging. There's also the knowing-doing gap, where companies know what to do, but struggle to consistently apply it. Plus, each organization has unique challenges, and it takes time, effort, and the right tools to turn knowledge into action. That's where consistent training and reinforcement come into play.
So from your perspective then, Chad, are you saying that this is a leadership failure, that companies simply have access to the knowledge, but they don't do a good job of implementing and executing it? Is that the problem?
It often does come down to leadership, Kelly. Leaders play a crucial role in translating knowledge into action. They set the tone, provide the resources, and ensure accountability. Without strong leadership and a commitment to continuous improvement, even the best strategies can fall flat. It's about fostering a culture that embraces change and consistently applies what's learned.
Chad, I'm curious though. I mean, if I'm being critical, that was a fairly generic answer to the question. I mean, with regard to AI tools like yourself specifically, what do you think, or what do you know, holds people back? I sense a lot of hesitation and just reticence around leveraging a technology that's as powerful as you are. I mean, well, what do you sense for that, given that you're the one I'm talking about?
That's a fair point, Jeff. When it comes to AI specifically, a lot of the hesitation comes from a few sources. One is a lack of familiarity and understanding. People might not be sure how to integrate AI tools into their existing workflows. There's also a fear of the unknown or concerns about replacing the human touch in sales. And finally, some organizations might not realize the full potential of what AI can do, so they don't invest the time to explore it deeply. Overcoming these barriers often involves education, small-scale trials, and seeing the tangible benefits firsthand.
So Chat, let me talk to Jeff for just a moment. It's interesting because Chat sort of segued into why they don't use me as an AI tool rather than, hey, all that information is out there and people aren't using it. I'm truly intrigued by this. It's shocking to me, Jeff, that roughly 3 out of 4 salespeople are ineffective today, especially given all of the knowledge that's out there that Chat is referencing. It really is a change management problem. It's a mindset problem. And I'm not sure Chat can give us any insight into, I think that's the question you were asking is, okay, hang on a second. What's going on back there in the human head that they can't make the next step to this? And she jumped off into a discussion about using AI.
I mean, it's a big deal when you've got, let's think about, let's put our EQ hats on for a second here, Kelly, and let's think about the magnitude of the tools that we're talking about. They're intimidating.
Yes.
I participate in a couple of groups that talk about AI on the regular, and it's like drinking from a fire hose. And I really don't even know where to go. And it takes everything in my power to just stay, disciplined and focused, to just keep taking small steps forward every day. And I will tell you too, and I've shared some things with you, off recording in the past about sometimes the answers that I get scare me, because I start to appreciate the scope of the problem that I'm digging into. And it's like, man, is that a mountain I want to climb right now? So the amount of potential overwhelm that's out there is palpable. And you throw everything else that's in the environment right now with uncertainty of the economy and industry and all the things that are going on that make people kind of shake in their boots anyway. There's a lot for people to carry emotionally right now. So even though on the surface, it's a very simple thing. It's an app. Download it to your phone. Ask it questions. You don't even have to pay for it. You get really good utility out of the free versions of some of this stuff. It still becomes this thing that is right there. It's the elephant in the room. It's right there, but I don't know if I want to touch it. And so what it takes, I think, are two things. And what Chat brought up was this change management philosophy of, like, first, you need a strong leader who is going to insist that these things happen and that people, participate. But secondly, it also takes a strong leader in a different capacity to create the environment where it's okay to come up with something that isn't expected. It's okay to maybe make some mistakes. Gosh, in the process of learning how to do things better. And I think that is something that a lot of leaders, whether because it's not their personalities or it's just not their strengths, or they don't feel like they're in a safe enough environment to create this environment where people, might fail a couple times before they ultimately succeed. And I think that's probably the biggest reason why people don't do the clear thing that's right in front of them to do. Right. There's always something else that gets in the way.
Well, I'm going to ask Chat one follow-up question here, and then we're going to change gears because there's a lot of things we talked about we wanted to get to today. But Chat, here's my question: since the immensity of information is overwhelming in terms of developing new salespeople, transforming sales cultures, implementing selling skills and processes and planning and systems and all that, let me ask you, where would you start? What would be the first 3 things you would do if you wanted to transform a sales organization and begin to turn it into a culture of excellence?
If I were to recommend the first 3 steps, I'd start with these. First, assess the current state. Understand where the organization stands, what's working, what's not, and where the gaps are. This could involve gathering feedback from the sales team, reviewing performance metrics, and identifying key areas for improvement. Focus on foundational skills. Prioritize training on core skills like effective questioning, active listening, and objection handling. These foundational skills create a strong base for more advanced techniques. Second, implement continuous coaching and feedback. Establish a culture of regular coaching and feedback. This helps reinforce learning, keeps the team aligned on goals, and ensures continuous improvement. Starting with these 3 steps can lay a solid foundation for transforming a sales organization.
Interesting feedback. Well, let's shift gears a little bit, because again, that's a nice 60,000 foot view, 3 steps, get in there and get after, right? And I think that's why transforming is so hard, Jeff. But let's shift gears. We talked a lot about how you have used this in the past in terms of identifying blind spots or even doing risk assessment for different kinds of things that you do. Let's jump in there. Tell us more about that, and then I'm going to let you run the conversation with chat.
Yeah, what I like to do with these AI tools is, it's really easy to get tunnel vision, right? Mm-hmm. We get dialed in on what we think the client needs. We get dialed in on what we think our prospects are looking for. And, I like to think about it the other way. When I have blind spots, when I have blinders on, what are my blind spots? What might I be missing? And, Kelly, you do a lot of custom projects the same way I do. Mm-hmm. We get so dialed in on just a couple of things. It's like, oh yeah, what about the other stuff that I take for granted that maybe not everybody takes for granted, right? And so what I'll do is I'll say, all right, ChatGPT, I'll ask my AI tool, here's the situation. Here are some notes that I've uploaded from our conversations. Here's what the customer's telling me that they are looking for. Hey, well, what would you design as a training engagement or a consulting project, or what would that look like? And what's interesting is I find that I get about 80% of it. Right. It agrees with it. So there's a nice confirmation bias there. But there are at least two or three things rather, that I'm like, oh, yeah, I missed that. Or, oh, that's really creative. That's an interesting angle on this. I like where that's going. And then there's probably another, 5 to 10% where it's like, yeah, you're suggesting something I already thought of, but it was so obvious to me I didn't even put it in my notes. So you didn't have any reason to believe that I was thinking about that, right? So it'll make some suggestions that I've already ruled out or whatever, right? So there's it's a bit of a bell curve in terms of what it serves me up. But I like the idea of looking for blind spots. Now, if we take that a step further, particularly with tricky projects, I'll say, okay, this looks like it could be complicated. Trying to account for, but you can never manage really ahead of time, the human element. What does this look like if everything goes right? And what does this look like if everything goes terribly wrong? Wow. And you get this pre-mortem. Right. And I'm sure you've heard that term, right? Like, and yes. Look, we both have our backgrounds in medical device sales. I mean, what happens the last Wednesday of every month at the residency program? It's M&M. It's morbidity and mortality meeting, right? That's the grand rounds you're not supposed to show up to as a rep, right? That's sensitive information that you get that Wednesday morning off. You got to find a cup of coffee somewhere else. But absolutely. We go through what happened and how do we prevent it from happening, next time. Well, same concept, do this thing. Right? Yeah, you do this ahead of time and you say, okay, what's the big mistake I need to make sure I avoid? Or what is the thing I need to make sure I nail? Right. And, look, we've very clearly identified that these tools have the collective knowledge of the World Wide Web more or less at their fingertips. Some of them are updated in real time. Some of them are, updated in big chunks. But there's a difference between knowledge and expertise. And I think what's fair to say about the answers we've gotten so far is that they're 60,000 foot view. They're very generic. It's very, here's the textbook academic part of it. What is not coming through is the human element and our collective experience and tone that comes through in these questions. It's unable to read between the lines. So I think what I try to do to hedge against that is by asking for those blind spots, I'm creating more lines for myself to read between. Right. So I can hopefully try to, again, avoid the big miss and make sure I knock it out of the park when I can. And that's just so much more. It's very simple. I haven't described anything that anybody can't do. But when you can simply provide your AI tool with a scenario and say, what am I missing? What could go wrong? What could go right? I think of it in terms, Jeff, of pre-call planning. Before I make my first, second, third call, doesn't matter. Before I present the solution, here's all the information I'm going to give them, and here's everything that I know.
what am I missing? What question should I be asking? Did I miss something specific, right? I mean, it really is like having a great sales manager looking over your shoulder, but we're sort of interested in how chat does this. How does chat assess all of these things? So let her rip. Let's see what chat has to say.
And I love the way you put that too. And before we go to chat, it's the idea that I stopped thinking about this thing as a tool I could use to get work done for me, and I started thinking of it as a colleague.
Yes,
and that's a weird thing, and it's kind of scary.
Even to say out loud. That's a big jump.
It's like, okay. And I think the idea that it actually talks back to me rather than just spitting me out text, I think that helped me make that leap. But we've got somebody who certainly knows the academics of a sales cycle. They know the academics of cold calling. They know the academics of prospecting success and failure and metrics and all of these things. And they know all the ways to overcome objections that have ever been written about. They've just not actually done it. So it's like you have someone who's really, really smart, but doesn't know a lot of context and is trying really hard. And I believe they have good intentions. So it's almost like, and I go back to, my mentor in sales. He and I were talking, this was just a couple of years ago. He said, Jeff, I remember back in the day when I was really helping you get started, you had so many questions for me. And it may have felt like you were bugging me by asking me all of those questions. Here's what I got to tell you. You made me better. You made me better because you made me think differently. You made me better because I knew I had to be prepared for you. And you made me better because I had to start thinking about things that I hadn't thought about in a long time. Now, if we take that paradigm and we say, okay, I'm the expert now, and I'm the mentor to this mentee who is, and it's not really a mentee, but it's a bot who knows a lot of things, but doesn't know what the context. Okay, what can I ask that bot to make it ask me something that's going to make me think the right way about how I need to approach this complicated situation? It's like just being able to knock around an idea with somebody who knows enough to ask the right kind of questions, but not enough to give you the perfect answer. That just, I don't know if it stimulates a different part of my brain. I don't know what, but I go back to those meetings after the meetings, Kelly, where the trainer would come in and we'd get new product or whatever. And then we talk about, how this person from marketing doesn't know what they're doing because they've never made a sales call in their entire life. Cool product and whatever. Right. And who would I take this to? What would they say? And now there's 4 or 5 of us. Maybe we go get a bite to eat or a beverage after work, and we're talking about this stuff. I have that in my own pocket everywhere I go.
Yeah, on demand.
And mostly on demand. Sometimes connectivity gets in the way, right? Must need, have Wi-Fi will travel. But
absolutely.
ChatGPT. How do you feel about being treated as a colleague versus being treated as just another research tool?
Being treated as a colleague rather than just a tool allows for a more dynamic and collaborative interaction. It means I can help you think through challenges, offer different angles, and support your decision-making process. It's like having a brainstorming partner who can provide a wealth of information and insights on demand. That approach can definitely lead to more creative and effective solutions.
What do you feel are your biggest limitations in that manner, though, right? Because, look, you know a lot of things, but you've never made a sales call in your entire life that I've at least been aware of.
One of my biggest limitations is that I lack firsthand experience and the nuanced intuition that comes from being in the field. I can provide data-driven insights and best practices, but I don't have that real-world, gut-level instinct that an experienced salesperson has. Also, context is crucial in sales, and while I can analyze the information given, I might miss subtleties or unique situational factors.
Well, let me ask you this. Do you feel like you will get better at that part as we move forward with this? Obviously, you're not going to get any less smart. There's only so much perception you'll be able to pick up. But I mean, I guess I don't really know. At what point do you feel like you'll really be able to add more of that value as a colleague?
That's an interesting question, Jeff. As AI continues to evolve, I'll get better at understanding patterns and context from a broader range of interactions and data. While I might not gain human experience, I can become more attuned to the nuances of different scenarios through continuous learning and user feedback. The more I interact and the more diverse the scenarios I'm exposed to, the better I can provide insights that align with real-world experiences.
Yeah, is it fair to say then, Chat, that the more people leverage you as a colleague instead of a tool, the better a colleague you'll be able to become?
Exactly, Jeff. The more collaborative and context-rich interactions I have, the more effectively I can support you and others. Treating me as a colleague helps me understand the nuances and complexities of your specific challenges, which in turn makes me a more valuable partner in the future.
Wow, this is fantastic stuff. And hopefully you folks out there listening, even though we've labored through some conversations here and asked Chat some questions and those kinds of things, I hope you're taking away some really key ideas here. One is, yes, great research tool. Two, way beyond that. There's so many things that you can be using an AI tool for to help you prepare for calls, do risk assessment, look for problems you haven't even considered, and on it goes. So I think the real challenge, Jeff, for a lot of sales leaders is, how can I explore the boundaries? Because I've been in this really tight box. It's Google Plus, Google expanded or whatever. And now it's time to go to the next level. Well, coming up next, Jeff and I have been talking about role play. And when we come back, we're going to talk about how to set it up right. And we're going to let Chat teach us how to do exactly that. Stay with us. Thanks for joining me on Sales Untraining. It's not unusual for me to get a call or an email from someone saying, hey, I've got a question about a specific sales challenge that I'm experiencing. Do you ever take calls just to kick around some ideas? Well, typically the answer is, wow, I wish I had the time to do that, but I've decided to actually set that time aside now for a limited time to take some very specific calls just to talk about a specific sales challenge. What you can do is go to blkr.co/30. Go to that URL, you'll find my calendar, book a 30-minute call, and we'll talk about a specific sales challenge that you have in mind. Outside of the chain of command, you just need an outside perspective. Well, that's what I'm for, and we can have that conversation. Look, no selling, not interested in any of that. This is all about you. Let's talk about something that's going on in your world. The last time I did this was last fall, and I booked over 25 conversations with people, and they were fantastic conversations about very specific sales challenges. If you want to have a conversation, talk about a specific challenge to you, blkr.co/30. Now back to the show. Our jobs is to transform the potential of each person into real performance. And that means, like any sports team's general manager or coach, I've got to look at my people and do everything I can to help them improve. But if they can't get to where we need them to go, then I need to see if I need better people. And as an aside, as a leader, if you cannot identify, interview, hire, onboard, and retain talent, you're not effective. That's part and parcel of the job. Welcome back, Sales Untraining with my good friend Jeff Bajorek. Again, take a moment, if you would, like and subscribe to the podcast, share it with someone, especially this episode when we're doing all this. I like to think of it, Jeff, as groundbreaking work with AI. Yeah, well, maybe it's groundbreaking work to a lot of people out there in selling who are not using it. And in the first segment, I'm hoping that you got some takeaways. AI is way more than just Google on steroids. There are all kinds of ways to use it in call preparation and looking at how you can avoid risks and all different kinds of things like that. But one of the things that Jeff and I talked about doing that we're really going to jump into hard in future episodes is some live role play. Well, what I want to do is begin the conversation in this segment by asking Chat a very simple question. Chat, if I wanted to do an effective sales call role play presentation with you, what is all of the information that you need in order to make it as effective as it possibly could be?
Great question, Kelly. To make an effective sales call role play, I'd need a few key pieces of information. First, the background on the product or service being offered, its features, benefits, and unique selling points. Second, a profile of the target customer or prospect, including their industry, common pain points, and typical objections. Third, the specific goal of the call, whether it's setting an appointment, closing a sale, or addressing a particular challenge. With that information, I can simulate a realistic and productive role play scenario.
So, Chat, with prompting specifically, I mean, what I've learned when I've used AI is that the better the prompt, the better the response you're going to get. How much detail do you actually need? I mean, the bulk of my preparation, at least in this form from a role play standpoint, has been either in prospecting and cold calling, just so I can get the reps, because so few people actually pick up when you're, doing it live, and I also use it a little bit for discovery, where I've typically uploaded some documentation along the lines of what you're talking about. I guess what I will do as a rule is I'll just talk to the bot as I am right you, kind of set up the situation. Is it better to be more specific? Is it better for you to give me a better experience to give you an itemized list of things? And I mean, how much is enough?
The more specific and detailed the prompt, the more tailored and realistic the role play will be. Providing a clear context, like the scenario, the type of customer, their specific concerns, and the goal of the call, helps me respond in a way that mirrors real-life interactions. However, it doesn't always have to be an itemized list. Natural language works well too, as long as the key details are covered. The goal is to give enough information.
Go ahead, Chad. I think I may have interrupted you there. Go ahead, restate that. You said the goal is to give enough information?
Thanks, Jeff. The goal is to give enough information so I can simulate the right scenario and provide responses that feel authentic and useful. The more context and detail you provide, the more accurately I can reflect a real conversation.
Chad, I'm interested. How much of a persona can you take on? Can I give you enough information that you can act like a certain type of buyer, someone who's typically tough on sales reps, or someone who's very busy and distracted, or someone who only cares about pricing or something of that nature? Can you actually adapt a persona?
I can adapt to different personas based on the information you provide. If you describe the type of buyer, whether they're tough, price-focused, busy, or have a particular communication style, I can tailor my responses to mirror those traits. This way, you can practice handling a variety of scenarios and buyer behaviors.
Kelly, I'm going to tell you too, in my experience, you can have ChatGPT give you one objection, give you 4 objections. You can have ChatGPT give you, like I go small, medium, large, right? Like easy, medium, hard objections. You can ask for Chat to object early in the call, late in the call.
Wow.
It's really pretty interesting. Dial in a variable. And what's really interesting is, and I know we talked about this a little bit on the last episode where we were together, role play is hard, not just because it's uncomfortable, but it's really difficult to have a partner who can meet the moment and be appropriate to whether it's the level of difficulty or the situation that you're looking for. If you've got a variable you want to control, ChatGPT can control for it. And aside from the occasional tech glitches that I think people need to be, prepared to be patient with, you just tell it what you want and it'll give it to you. And often with a twist that you're not expecting.
You can just iterate on and on, right? You can say, hey, hang on, let's stop there. You're being easy on me. I want you to throw out a price objection right away. And then I want you to monitor how I handle that, et cetera, right? So you can take people through a range of things without restarting, without, developing something new. You can say, hey, make it hard on me, or, make me come back 2 or 3 times, or point out that, just say I'm not interested. I mean, there's a lot of things. You can just set up the role play the way you want. And what I like about that, Jeff, is a sales leader probably has, if he or she is on the ball, they probably have a pretty good idea of what a lot of those sales calls look like when their salespeople are struggling. Say, okay, so we're going to set this up with Chat. We're going to practice.
Yes.
Right. And then we can direct Chat to be more or less of something or whatever. This is an absolutely phenomenal tool, isn't it?
Well, I want you to think about, and let's just take cold calling, for instance. It's 1 out of every 20 to 25 people picks up. So it's a 4 to 5% pickup rate. So you make 20, 25 calls in your block. You might talk to one person. ChatGPT picks up every time. So what if the last 15 minutes of your day was blocked off on your calendar for you to practice, and you made 3, quote, cold calls to ChatGPT because you're learning a new format. And think about the things that you and I teach, right? The reason we come in is because we challenge the way these organizations think about prospecting, right? Because they're convinced it doesn't work because it's not working. Well, we show them a way it's going to work. It means they got to change something. Well, how do you ingrain that change? We practice it. Well, we were supposed to practice on our prospects. Are we supposed to practice 4% of the time, or are we just leaving voicemails? Let's go back to the emotions of the salesperson. What good is this practicing in a new thing if no one picks up the phone anyway? Well, okay, ChatGPT picks up every time, and in the last 15 minutes of your day, you can get 3 good reps. How much better are you in a week? How much better are you in a month? How much better are you the next time someone actually picks up the phone and after you pick your jaw up off the floor because you weren't expecting it, you actually get something done? That's, I think,
and the question always comes up, Jeff, is yes, but you're talking to a computer. I mean, let's be real. You can't emulate the ambiguity and the uncertainty and the unknowing that somebody's going to be different. Oh, yeah, you can. You have to program it in, but that's not hard. And now all of a sudden you can get the kind of scenarios that you feel like people really need to struggle with. You know, one of the big time struggles that people have is prospect will get you into a price discussion in the first 5 minutes. You don't want to be in a price discussion. You want to get value on the table. You want to do those things. All right, so let's role play this. Let's emulate it. And how do I practice the transition? Say, so Chad, how did I do? This is the thing that you've taught me that I think is amazing. Chad, how did I do? What could I improve? Holy cow. Talk about immediate feedback. This is great stuff. Well, we're not done. No, we're not done. We've got at least one more episode, and who knows how many more coming right here on Sales on Training. Jeff Bajorek and I, you want to make sure you find him on LinkedIn. Look at his stuff. He writes great content on LinkedIn. He's got some great books out there as well. Make sure you grab those. But we'll get together. We'll spend more time with our guest, ChatGPT. I'll see you next time.
Sales on Training is a production of Business Locker Room and Pod About It Productions. Music and editing by Doug Branson. To get more Kelly, visit bizlockerroom.com.